Hi everyone, I'm Hayley. I'm always in the craft room and today I would like to make a denim skirt. Now I say today, you know I'm not the kind of vlogger where we make things in a day. Although actually I did recently make a skirt basically in a day, so never say never. Here is the fabric. It is a lovely dark wash denim that I bought years ago from the sadly now closed Cloth Spot. I've pre-washed it and it does have a little bit of stretch, not loads, but a small amount. I'm hoping that that means this skirt will be super comfortable. We need to mitigate for the stretch though and make sure it doesn't mean that this skirt is always sliding down. Now, in terms of a pattern, I'm going to base it on a skirt I've made a couple of times before, but with some modifications, of course. So the pattern is October on Trend, and it's from the Autumn Winter Ladies magazine in 2013, and I have made this skirt twice before, and it comes in two lengths, as you can see. I'm going to be doing the longer length. Now, I know the trend at the moment is for quite long denim skirts. I'm not going to do that because I know me, if I'm putting all this effort into a garment, I want to wear it for years and years. I don't want it to look dated in 2 seasons. So I'm just going to go with a style that I know I like and that I know suits me. And basically we're basing it off this skirt, which is very plain and simple. It has 2 darts at the front, 2 darts at the back, a waistband and a centre back zip. But it can't be that simple, can it? Because I want buttons down the front. So I've already got the buttons. They are these wooden ones, and I think it's gonna look lovely. I'm going for a wide button placket down the front. I'll base the size of the placket on the size of the buttons, and I've also got some top stitching thread in 2 different colours, and I'll decide which I think looks better. At the moment, I'm leaning towards the lighter because I think it goes nicely with the buttons, but we'll see. So the changes I want to make to the pattern is to add this button placket. The pattern piece I've got is cut on the fold. So the way I think this will work is that the centre line of the buttons needs to be on the centre front line, which would have been the fold. I've drawn it out, let me show you. So yeah, that makes sense to me. I think I'm right, I guess we'll find out. One way I could do this, I was thinking, is literally make up the button plackets on 2 pieces of fabric and then cut afterwards so that I can be sure I've got the size right. I don't know if I'm going to do that because there'll probably be a lot of fabric to wrangle and it sounds a bit awkward. I also need to take into account the fact that this has a waistband, and honestly, that's boggling my mind a little bit at the moment, so we might just come to that later. I'll show you the waistband construction that it has at the moment, which is a completely straight waistband, which I know doesn't suit a lot of people, but actually for my body shape, a straight waistband is really good. And it goes over at the back. Here I've got a little press stud and a hook and bar. Now, firstly, I don't want any opening at the back. Secondly, I don't think I want this kind of overlap. I'm thinking down the front button placket, 1 button on the waistband, but I don't want it to stick out further than the placket like a kind of fly front would. I just want it in line. In terms of getting it on and off, initially I was like, I'll just undo the buttons. And then I thought, no, I think I'll just undo the buttons. Actually, what I'll do is either try and wriggle into it and stretch it all out, or I'll just look at it and go, I can't be bothered faffing with that and I'll wear something else. So I am going to put a zip in, probably at the side seams. So then I do need to think about all of the finishing, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. It will all work out. I can figure this out. It's not that hard, is it? Famous last words. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw out a new pattern, including the placket. So I've been looking at my pattern pieces from my original tracing of this pattern, and I did a size 42 at the waist and a size 40 at the hips. The fit is great. However, inside my pattern piece plastic pocket, it's a lot of P's, I've found the front and the back, but there's no waistband. Why is that? There is another pattern piece for a patch pocket from a different pattern, which is handy because I do think I might want patch pockets on the back, but I'm going to have to retrace the waistband. I don't know where it's gone. I was trying to think, have I used it for something else? Whilst I am tracing the waistband again, I'm also going to trace the pocket pattern pieces because they're not side seam pockets, are they? Hip pockets. And I've never done them before. I didn't think they were kind of appropriate. This is supposed to be a tweed skirt, but for me, they didn't seem work appropriate for those two versions, and I would never use a pocket. But I think in a denim skirt, they will look really nice. So I need to also trace out the pattern pocket pieces. No, trace out the pocket pattern pieces. And I need to think about fabric for the pocket bag. I probably don't want denim, do I? It's quite bulky. I might have a look in the stash and see if I've got just a nice thinner cotton. So I need to find the pattern pieces. We are looking for pattern sheet C and the pieces are green. As I say, I've made this pattern a couple of times before, but I've mislaid the waistband piece. So what I'm going to do is quickly measure the waistband piece I've drawn out, measure it against those skirts, just to make sure that I'm right with a size 42. Yes, the waistband matches exactly, so I was right with what I thought I had made, which is a 42 at the waist and a 40 at the hips. I've traced off those extra pieces I needed, which was the pocket and the pocket facing and the waistband. And I should mention at this point that October patterns come without seam allowance, which actually for a project like this is great. So October's instructions are in the magazine, and what I do is scan the instructions with my phone and then print them out. And you can see on this one, as I've worked through, I've actually crossed some out. If I do cross out instructions, and it is helpful on these because they're very wordy, I always do it in a heat erasable pen, you know, a friction marker, so I can iron this and they'll all disappear. I have noticed that I've made some notes down here, which interesting. Okay, right, it was just for cutting out that tweed version. So the pink tweed version, it looks like I bought at Gail K Fabrics, which if I recall correctly is in Atlanta, Georgia. And I absolutely love this skirt and love the fabric. And I've written down that I did 1 inch seam allowances, which I think was because I bound them all. Oh my goodness. This skirt is very well made. And I did hem tape as well. So I don't actually need that for this project, but interesting little piece of sewing history there. So you can see on these instructions that they show you the pattern pieces that you need. I have enlarged those on the computer and printed them out. That's the back piece, and I've mirrored them. Nope, so that I've got 2. And then I have been messing around with seam allowances. So this is the front piece. That's the other mirror image of it. So I've taped those together to make one full front pattern piece, and you would normally cut that on the fold. I've printed off two, one of which is a mirror, and then I've been working out how to do this button placket. So I printed them on a large piece of paper. That line is the centre front, as is that line. And then one of them will need buttons, one of them will need buttonholes. And in my mind, if I overlap them at the buttons, at that centre front, it should be the right size. So let's overlap those two and compare it to just cut and fold, tape together. Yes. Okay, so we're right in principle that if we put the buttons down the centre front, we're all good. I've then drawn in a line for the top stitching, where you flip it, and then seam allowance. And I just need to work out what dimensions those are, and then we can go from there, drawing it on the actual pattern piece. I hope that makes sense. So that's the one with buttons, and that's the one where we want buttonholes. So looking at my buttons, how big do I want the placket to be? These are my buttons, and they measure to 22 millimeters. I'm going to get my Vogue sewing book out and look for some guidance on how wide plackets should be. Well, annoyingly, I can't find much about it in Vogue. So I guess my options are browse some ready to wear and see what I think, or we could ask ChatGPT. How wide should a button placket be in relation to the size of the buttons? 1.5 to 2 times. Okay, so for 22mm buttons, we're looking for a placket of 35 to 40 millimeters. Just looking at it, I think 35, although it depends whether I want top stitching down either side of the placket, and I think I do. So that will visually narrow it quite a lot. We're going to browse some ready to wear denim skirts and see what kind of top stitching they usually do. I'm looking at denim skirts and a lot of them don't have any top stitching. I've seen one from Cezanne. The Marks and Spencer's one does have top stitching, but we're definitely going for more of a Cezanne than an M&S vibe. I'm going to actually draw out a placket. I need some more paper. I have just pulled out my buttons to compare them to the placket size, and do you know what I've just noticed? One of them is different. Why? What is going on? Can you see how that one has just a really different profile and it's a slightly different colour? I have no idea why. I have no idea why they're in a pack together. I don't know if I tried to buy 4 and one arrived different, or if I've just bagged them up incorrectly, but they're exactly the same size and they're close enough. So I'm just going to put the odd one on the waistband and nobody will notice. Okay, you can ignore the drawing in the middle. I have no idea what that is about, but you can see the 2 different widths of placket there. This is the wider one, this is the narrower one. And I've not centered that correctly. And also, I think we need to draw in our top stitching, because at first glance, I'm preferring the narrower one. But how far away from the edge, realistically, can I top stitch very neatly? I would say 3mm. I think if I aim for 2 and I wobble, it will be very noticeable. So let's draw in some top stitching at 3mm on either side. And look, I can't even draw it in dead straight with a ruler. So what chance do I have on a sewing machine? To be fair, I had cereal for breakfast this morning. I'm usually a porridge girly. and I just had like normal breakfast cereal and I'm feeling a little bit shaky. There was just, yeah, too much sugar, not enough substance, I think. Definitely had nothing to do with the 3 cups of black coffee I've drank. Okay, with top stitching, 3.5 centimetres, 4 centimetres. I prefer the narrower one. That just looks like nicer proportions to me. It's going to be harder to achieve, but when have I ever made my life easy? Right, so this needs to be 3.5 centimetres. This needs to be 3.5 centimetres. So we work back from the centre line. Couple of things. I am aware that there's no hem allowance along here. I've measured the skirt and I don't need to add a hem allowance because I want it shorter. Also, that table behind me is not really a table. It's a tabletop balanced on 2 things that are different height. I know it's wonky. We're going to ignore it. Here are my tiny pattern pieces. Here is my real one that I've traced off with no seam allowances. So the centre front is where we want the buttons. The buttons are in the middle of the placket. The placket is going to be 35 millimetres. This is annoying because I need to half it. We're going to make the placket 36 millimetres. Okay, so that we can do 18 on either side. I'm going to line that up on 18. I'm going to mark 36 and the other side. Okay, so let's do that all the way down. So we're going to have buttons or buttonholes here. So we need to add the same again there and then a seam allowance. So we're going to fold it along there, that will cover that, and then we'll put buttons on at centre front. And now we need a seam allowance. I'm not going to turn that under and top stitch it down because that will be bulky. I'm just going to overlock. So a 1 centimetre seam allowance there will be sufficient. Should have marked this at the same time I was doing the last measuring, but never mind. Right, and I am making this pattern now with seam allowances. I did the alterations without and now I'm adding them on. It makes sense in my head. Let's see if it works in fabric. So here is one of my skirt fronts cut out and all marked up with all my folding lines for the placket. I am going to fuse along this pocket edge so it doesn't stretch out. And I'm also going to fuse interfacing across the whole placket for stability. I don't want any stretch there, and this fabric does have a bit of stretch. I think if I don't mitigate that, as I walk around, the button holes will stretch apart and look messy. So I'm going to do that fusing and then I'm going to sew the dart. I have fused and overlocked around every piece, and I was just about to sew the dart in when I thought, you know what? I'm going to need to sew some things in navy thread for construction, and I'm going to want to top stitch some things with gold thread. So you might see I've cleared a space. I've moved my cover stitch away and I'm going to replace it with my old sewing machine so that I can set one up in blue thread and one with the top stitching thread. So I've set up my old machine, my Smarter by Pffaf C1100 Pro, and I've put the top stitching thread in that machine. That is because there is one feature on this machine that was on my wish list, but I couldn't get in any machines when I looked at upgrading, and that is a knee lift. It's so useful when you're top stitching because you don't need to raise the presser foot with your hand. You can do it with your leg, which leaves your hands free to finagle everything just how you want it. So I thought that was a good use of this machine. The other one is threaded navy, and I've used it to sew my dart. I've pressed it to centre front as was in the instructions. And now I've folded over my placket and I've marked the line of top stitching with chalk because, yeah, contrast top stitching, you've got to be so careful, haven't you? I'm going to do my best to keep this extremely straight. I've put denim needles in both machines, and the two things I need to remember is not to try and backstitch, because as soon as I backstitch with top stitching thread on, that happens. So I just need to set off and do it and pull the thread through to the back and tie it off. And also the thread snips that are built into this machine can't cut the top stitching thread because it's so thick. So I must remember to use the tie off button, not the cut button, and then cut them manually. Watch me start this seam by backstitching. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to be really careful. Oh, and I want a slightly longer stitch length. I'm going to change it to 3 for the top stitching. Yay! I did remember those 2 things, but only because you were watching. That's a good neat line, isn't it? Oh, also, I decided to go with the darker top stitching thread. I'll tell you why whilst I pull this through to the back. So I compared them both to the buttons, and honestly, neither was a perfect match. They were both like quite nice, but not exact. But then I was looking at the selvage edge of the denim, and you may be able to see that along here there is a woven in thread, and it is the colour of the darker top stitching thread, which is the one that I've chosen. So it just seemed to match so well to that. I felt like it was a sign, and I thought it looked really nice with the buttons. So that's what I've gone for. On the back, that's worked nicely with the overlocking and it's not too bulky. What I need to decide is whether I want a row of top stitching here and another one here. So imagine this is the front of the skirt. Yeah, I think I do. I think more is more in this case. So we said 3mm from there and 3mm from there, didn't we? You know what? I'm going to chalk it in again. Let's not leave things to chance when they're centre front. Although having said that, is this going to be on top or underneath? Which side will have the buttonholes and which side will have the buttons? Don't know. Never know. Cannot do left and right at the best of times, but definitely not on the body and in reverse. This yellow chalk actually gives a good idea of what the stitching will look like. Do we just want one row? Do we not? Do we just want it on that side and not that side? Let's do this outside one first, which I definitely want, and then we'll decide about the second row. Yeah, I think I'm happy at that. So I'm going to get on with the pockets. In fact, I just checked the time. I've got literally 10 minutes. So all I'm going to do is cut out the pockets and fuse along the bias edge with some Vilene form band. And yeah, that's it for today. Didn't get a skirt made, did I? Didn't even get one half of the front made. Anyway, I'm loving this project so far. The top stitching thread, touch all the wood, doesn't melamine count? Is so far working perfectly. Okay, it's the same day but much later now, and I've cut out all of the pocket pieces. So here are my 2 matching pocket pieces from the denim, and then for the pocket bags I've decided to use this cotton. It's a remnant from a dress I made last year, the Notches Patterns Odell dress, and I decided to use this particular fabric for a couple of reasons. The first thing is that the base is navy, so it looks nice and not too conspicuous. The second reason is that it's very similar front and back, because I want it to look nice if you look in my pockets and also nice if you look inside the skirt. So that was a consideration. I did have a crafting cotton that was printed only on one side, and I thought that wouldn't look so nice on the insides. So I thought that was a good fabric for that reason. And last of all, I wanted a cotton for longevity. A lot of my fabric scraps are rayon viscose, and that's just not very hard wearing, is it? And I thought that cotton was thin but strong. I have fused this edge of the pocket bag, and I've realised that I didn't need to. I realised as I was doing it. So if you look at the pattern piece for the denim part, the grain line is straight up and down, as you would expect. It's in line with the grain line on the garment itself. Now, there you can see where the pocket opening will be. And on the facing piece, the grain line is different. The grain line matches the pocket opening edge. And these are just the kind of details that you only seem to get with a few companies, and Ottobre is definitely one of them. The reason I think they have you do it with the grain line like that, I think, but correct me if I'm wrong, is so that this edge is on the straight grain and it won't stretch out. So if you look, the pocket opening edge, which on the denim is on the bias, in the cotton, that is on the straight grain, which will have absolutely no give. And I just think that's genius. And I did follow that grain line when I cut it out. I just didn't give any thought to it. I just did it automatically. And then as I was fusing it, I was like, oh, I definitely need to fuse this piece because it's on the bias. I was like, it's not on the bias. So clever. Anyway, the next instruction is to sew the facing to the skirt right sides together, like so, and then I'll flip it and press it, understitch, and I will actually top stitch along the pocket edge, I think, just for some added details. I think on jeans you would get stitching along the pocket edge, wouldn't you? I absolutely take that back. The first thing I'm going to do is overlock around all the pocket pieces so that I don't have to worry about finishing those edges later. So do you remember how everything was going so well and I was extolling the virtues of this machine and its beautiful top stitching? Yeah, the sewing gods heard me and it made them angry. Literally the very next seam I tried to top stitch, which was this pocket, the top stitching thread got sucked down into the machine and it's caught in the bobbin housing, and I cannot get it free. I've tugged, I've pulled, I've pushed, I've taken the top plate off. Unfortunately, Mr. Craft Dream is out, which, just how rude. When he comes in the craft room when I'm busy sewing, I'm like, do you mind? Quit asking me questions, okay? I'm busy here. But the second he is off site and I need him, I'm just like, how dare you? I need my personal engineer here to fix everything right now. Anyway, there are a few other things I can do, I guess, while I wait. So I am going to measure whether this is coming up the right width, because that seems important before I make the other one, doesn't it? I'm using this black skirt to check because even though this is the incorrect length, I'm doing the length of my other one, it is the correct width, in that the really tweedy one does seem to be stretched out quite a lot compared to the lining. So I thought it was better to use this one for checking sizing width-wise. So that is centre front. And what I want to know is if this line down the middle of my placket where I'm going to put the buttons is centre front. Have I done all my calculations correctly? So the blue mark, can you see it there, is centre front of this skirt. This blue mark is centre front of my denim skirt. If we match the two, I should have 1 centimetre seam allowance at the side seam. Looking good. Okay, oh well that's a relief, because I don't know, that doesn't look like a very wide skirt piece to me, but I guess that's in the middle. Yeah, fair enough. Right, so what I'm going to do is cut out the other front piece, because I did only cut one because I wasn't sure if I was quite on the right tracks. So I'll get that cut and I'll sew the dart, and hopefully then we will get some technical assistance with the jammed machine. I decided to prep the rear patch pockets while I wait, and I thought I'd compare them to a couple of ready-to-wear pairs of jeans I have. And I cut these out with seam allowance, but if we look, they're basically exactly the same size as these ready-to-wear pockets. Maybe pockets and skirts are smaller. I don't know. Anyway, I'm still going to use a 1 centimetre seam allowance. It's very similar to that, isn't it? And I'm just looking at how they've done it, and there just seems to be 2 rows of top stitching around the edge. They have done quite a cute detail on these ones with a bar tack. I'll probably just keep it simple, but I'm going to get these all overlocked around the edges and pressed correctly, ready to top stitch on. I've been thinking about the back panel because I do want to get that cut out, and I'm not going to do a centre back seam, because if I did do one, it would be to put the zip in, but then the top stitching, I can't picture how I would do it, because if we look at the top stitching on these jeans, that's the flat fell seam, isn't it? So I don't see how I could do that and put a zip in it. There probably is a way, and maybe I could just mimic it with overlocking or whatever, but I just don't think it's necessary in a skirt. So I'm going to cut the back on the fold and do a side seam zip, about which we will worry later. Okay, ignore my hair, I'm in thinking mode. So I've been thinking about the zip, and I have my other front done. It's not top stitch yet, although I have chalked it. They're going to overlap like so. And I thought, could I just hide a zip in there? And the answer is definitely yes, but also I don't know how. I don't think I've ever done a lapped zip. I just like an invisible zip. They're invisible. But then I thought, well, is there some other form of opening I could do here that isn't buttons? Because I don't want to be constantly doing up buttons. And I thought, what about the old press stud trick, which I've done many times before with things that have buttons, but I just sew the buttons on the front and then use a popper on the inside so that it's quicker. If I used a really big one, I was thinking gold to go with my top stitching, I don't think that would pop undone under the strain of sitting down, would it? And also, would that look good? I love it when I'm wearing something to demonstrate what I'm talking about. This is a genuine placket, but the buttons are just sewn through both layers. And I don't think anyone could ever tell. I just take this on and off over my head. But on a skirt, which is under strain, Would it be obvious that the buttons are just staying put and not moving, or would that look better anyway? So many decisions. What I might try is making it without a side seam, making it without a side seam zip, sewing the poppers on, and just seeing how it feels and how it looks. I can always add a side seam zip afterwards, can't I, if I decide not to go that route. The only thing is the waistband, because I would like to avoid splitting the waistband at the side. As drafted, the waistband is one piece cut on the fold and it goes all the way around. Actually, it's intended that you have a centre back zip, but that doesn't really make a difference, does it? So if I tried it and it didn't work, you know what, then what I could do, because I do the zip on the left-hand side, I could leave the waistband attached on 3/4 of it, go past that point and cut it off, giving me a seam allowance on the back, and then I could just cut a new bit for 1/4. That would hardly waste any fabric, and it would mean I had a seam allowance at the back. What I obviously can't do is just cut it and then sew a zipping, because I won't have any seam allowance. Okay, I think that's what we're going to try. My husband, I say he's gone AWOL. He has not gone AWOL. He's gone to Waitrose, which, you know, brill, thanks. But also, I am kind of itching for him to get home and help me. That said, I've got all the boring tasks done now. I cut the other centre front, I sewed the dart, I fused it, I've got it all ready for the top stitching, and I'll show you my pocket pieces as well. They're all ready to go. They just obviously need top stitching along the top and then onto the skirt. And I've also had a little play with pocket placement, which long-time viewers will know pocket placement is my nemesis. So if I bear in mind it's going to have a waistband, but I think it will sit about there. Am I there or thereabouts? Very hard to tell, and you know what it's like. I'd like to sew them on while it's flat. What I think I will do is get them completed, pin them on, and then take a video, because I don't know why, but a video shows me what photos or looking in the mirror doesn't. That's something I learned by making YouTube videos. Okay, so now that I have decided on the popper situation, I'm going to cut the waistband. I just had a thought. I was thinking about how the waistband is done on the pattern as drafted. Here's one I made earlier. And I'm like, I can disregard the lining instructions. Or can I? Do I need a lining with this? I am going to be wearing it with tights. I suppose I might wear it in summer on its own as well. If I do not line it and I wear it with tights, is it going to stick? Maybe not. I've got leggings on today. Oh, I don't know is the answer. And I don't really want to make it, try it and then add a lining, because it would be so much neater if I could tuck it under the waistband as it is here. Food for thought. I do have navy lining on hand, so that's good, because we all know if it meant I had to leave the house, I would not be lining it. It's a cat among the pigeons. I think I'll cut out the waistband and think about it. Okay, there's good news and there's not bad news, but a detour. So my husband came home, he fixed the machine, the top stitching is once again looking beautiful, so that's great. In the meantime, I was trying to cut out the waistband. And look, if you know me, you'll know what happened. I laid out the remaining fabric to work out where to cut a waistband. And you see here, that's where I cut the pockets out. And my waistband piece is to be cut on the fold, and it's that big. So I was like, I'll have to cut it down there and cut into this bit. And then I was like, that's annoying because this is quite a big piece of denim, isn't it? So then I got out a trouser pattern just so I could work out, like, is there enough for a pair of trousers? And the answer is yes, no. Like, is there? I mean, possibly. If I cut the waistband out there definitely is not. So that kind of makes it worse because, yeah. I think what I'm going to do is try and chalk in a pair of trousers not on the fold. So fabric flat, chalk around each piece twice, see if there is room, see what that would mean for the waistband. If I had to do side seams on the waistband and then I can get a pair of kind of jeans out of this, then that's happy days as far as I'm concerned. But if I can't, then we can just sack off the whole idea, and I'm sure I'll use the rest of it for something else. But I won't be able to rest until I know. So I'm going to have some fun at doing that, and also top stitching this front piece. So yeah, some of this selvage is going to be in the seam allowance. No one will ever know. I've got all my waistband pieces over there and even room here for a couple of pockets. I am going to have to do a contrast waistband on the inside of the trousers, but honestly, that's probably comfier anyway. Can't believe I made it. One thing leads to another, eh? That is all I've got time for now, so I'm going to sign off here for today, but I'm so pleased with my progress. I have just pinned one of the pockets on just to make sure that I've understood the instructions correctly, because one thing with Otobra is they're written instructions but no diagrams. I actually find them really good and really thorough, and yep, clearly I've got the methodology right on that. So with two front pieces pretty much assembled and the back cut out, I just need to decide whether I'm doing a lining. And I'm also absolutely thrilled that I've managed to cut out a pair of trousers as well. I do feel slightly sidetracked by that, not going to lie. I would quite like to just get on with those and abandon the skirt. I wouldn't say I've lost all enthusiasm, but I'm very enthusiastic about the trousers because I have been so short of casual trousers that aren't sweatpants. At the moment, I've got sweatpants and I've got jeans, and of my jeans, one pair needs heels because they're a bit longer and two pairs are cropped, neither of which are actually that useful to me in a casual doing the school run kind of way, because the cropped ones, now we're in November, my legs just get cold, and the slightly longer ones are just a bit more dressy. So if this works out, which I'm not saying it will because I've messed with it quite a lot, but if it does, they will be brilliant. Right, I'd best go. I'll update you again soon. Well, hello, I've basted the side seams together and I wanted to show you how it's looking. I'm so pleased. So you'll have to use your imagination a little bit. So there we are. I don't know why I've cut it so badly, but there's literally like a whole extra inch on one side. But I have chalked in where I think I need to cut it off to correct that. I literally have no clue what was going on. So at the moment, I've kind of, in effect, got a wrap skirt. I'm wearing leggings, so I'm not flashing you. And I actually think my pop-out idea is kind of genius. So this is making me remember why I often don't do hip pockets, and it's because they always stand proud. Anyway, it might be just a touch big. I don't know. Oh. The side seams are basted at 1 centimetre, which is the intended seam allowance. I drew my own seams on, but this is a stretch fabric. It's not drafted for a stretch fabric, but then also actually, maybe if we pin it shut, we will get a different story. Yeah, I think it's about right. You know what I'm like though, I always am so worried about making things too small. I just usually make them too big. Oh, can't tug on that with a clip. I don't know. Also, what do you think of the pocket pattern, the pocket placement? I'm wondering if they're a bit low, but because ready-to-wear pockets are always low on me, I worry I overcorrect and make them too high. So, thoughts and next steps. I'm really, really pleased with this. I think it's looking so good, but I do think it needs a lining. It is sticking to my leggings, and I was thinking, even in summer, actually, if I use a rayon Bemberg lining, even in summer, that will feel nice. So I don't think it would put me off wearing it in summer. Now, a polyester lining or even an acetate probably would, but a lovely rayon Bemberg, which is my favourite lining anyway, will feel cool and dreamy in the summer, and it will stop it slipping on my tights. So I need to cut out another shell. That's easy enough to do, and I won't face the waistband. The waistband is cut in one piece and folded over because it's completely straight, so that's easy enough. So I think that's probably tomorrow's job, to be honest. It's getting quite late. Yeah, it's cut out the lining, assemble another inner skirt, but yeah, I'm going to give you another little wiggle because I'm so pleased with it, and all the top stitching since my husband sorted the machine is going just absolutely fine. And I do really like actually this length. Obviously it needs a hem, but I think looking pretty good. I've dipped my hair in my tea. Whoops. So what I'm going to do is I did cut double layers. So did I? Editing Hayley. This is just in case the last clip didn't have any audio. Why do I always wear something low cut when I'm filming like this? Urgh. I've had to sit down because, okay, no, ignore me. That was not important. Look what I just found in my pattern envelope. The pocket facings and the pockets. What?